It's 6 wins in a row for the Wolves, 7 matches unbeaten, another successful weekend at Molineux for Vitor and the boys. We're here to talk about it and all the other drama from over the weekend, as always. My name's Dave, as a party. Delighted once again to be alongside Jord and Joe. Joe, we'll start off with you. Busy weekend?
A lot of it was spent with you, to be fair. So
Gotta be good, mate.
Yeah, it was good, mate. It was good. It was a fairly early start Saturday, as Jord will attest to, which resulted in an early finish for me, to be fair. So it was. You could probably tell from the voice. I'm still a little bit. I think I'm on the.
Mate, your exit was dramatic as well. You probably don't even remember it. We for people that missed last week.
I do remember it.
No. We went for some sort of Talking Wolves leaving drinks for Matt, and we started off in Slug and Lettuce in Wolverhampton. And as soon as we walked in there, someone said, "Oh, what's the word for Matt to buy us a pint?" Because we joked about that last week, and we never actually decided on a word. And yeah, the beers flowed. But in the end, we were sat right by the door. And Joe, you said, "I think I'm going to the loo." And you went to the toilet, just walked straight out. You didn't say bye to any of us.
Yeah, to be fair, that's generally how I tend to exit social situations anyway.
You didn't even look at us, so you just walked straight past us for the exit. I was like, "Oh, fair."
I know I'm weak. And Aid, friend of the podcast, who was with us earlier. I'd done the same thing to him when he said to me, "I've got to go," and I said, "It'll be fine. Stay for another one. Your missus will be fine. Don't worry about it." And he stayed for another 2. And I know I'm even weaker than him, so I'd have still probably been there now if I'd have said bye. And I actually saw Matt in the toilet and said, "I'm going. I'm doing the slide arc." I think it was 8:30, something like that.
Yeah, it was good. I was out till in the end. I watched the boxing with Sam and Matt, and my phone had been dead for about 3 hours. So I was in the doghouse anyway. And Sam and Matt had gone. Say again, sorry?
What time was that then?
About midnight. I got home just after midnight. Yeah. And I had to go to Weatherspoons and say to the bouncer, "Mate, can you book me a taxi?" But it's funny. We ended up going to Spoons and it was heaving. And then everyone was asking, "Where's Vitor? Is Vitor coming?" And he ended up in Codsall, didn't he? So... George, you had a slightly quieter Saturday. I mean, you did join us for one, didn't you? But had to move on. But enjoyable weekend nonetheless.
Yeah, well, I had a really heavy Friday night, which wasn't planned, to be honest with you. Well, it sort of was planned, but I said I wasn't going to drink. But I watched the NFL draft with some of my mates in Wunborn, and we always we do a drinking game for it. And I was saying to Joe, I was meant to meet Joe at 12, and I think I rocked up about 1:45 because I just couldn't face leaving my bed. I had to go and fetch my car from Wunborn to even get to town. And I think I'd had 8 shots of Fireball and a couple Hague shots on the Friday night, along with Budweiser cans. And then obviously went to the Moon with Joe and then went to the game. And then, stayed out for a little bit. But I'd also double booked myself purely by accident. So we had booked tickets to go and watch The Accountant 2 at Odeon at Merry Hill at 8:20. Yeah. So they didn't start till 8:50 in the recliner chair as well. And I swear, during the credits, my eyes were I thought I fell asleep. I woke up and all of a sudden somebody else come on, and that was a good film though, to be fair. So I missed sort of all the shenanigans, but I was ropey, and I did start a little bit earlier as well.
Yeah,
with Joe.
We'll have to do it again though, because it was a good laugh, to be fair. So we'll have to make sure it's a more frequent thing anyway. But for people, there were a few people moaning about our Simon Wilson talk last week, so we will move on to the football now. But it finished obviously Wolves 3, Leicester 0. Team probably as we expected it. Jord, Jose Sa and Doc coming back in, maybe a little bit harsh on Santi Bueno, who obviously kept a clean sheet or helped towards that clean sheet at Old Trafford. But pretty straightforward, wasn't it? Probably one of the most comfortable victories of the season, I'd say.
Yeah, it was a bit of a procession, really. I thought Leicester started off okay, to be fair. You know, I think they knocked the ball around a little bit, and it was just a non-event, really. I mean, it was nice to actually go to a Wolves game with little to no pressure. It felt a bit pre-season vibes, I thought, for the first 15, 20 minutes. But then as soon as we got the first goal, Leicester's heads dropped, and we just battered them, let's be honest. Completely battered them. Repertoire of songs were coming out of the South Bank. Sun was shining. It was just a good day, to be honest.
No, I agree. Joe, I mean, you look at the the goals as well. I mean, Matheus Cunha opened the score, and I think Ryan had a lot of joy down that left hand side. To be honest, there was a couple of chances that he put into the area just beforehand as well. And again, it was probably one of the probably easiest finishes Matheus is going to have all season.
Yeah, I think it was. I didn't quite appreciate though at the time because I think because it was scored in front of the North Bank. Obviously, me and Jord were in the South Bank. You could kind of got the general gist of the pattern of the goal, but I think Cunha's done well to let it roll across him. So I think a lot of people there, and Strand Larsen has done it a couple of times. Ball that's coming across him with the goal almost adjacent to him, and he just tries to swipe it in at the near post. Whereas what Cunha's done is he's just kind of waited for it to roll across him. And to be fair, he knows he's got Wout Fass and Connor Cody next to him, so he could probably afford himself a little bit more time. And he has just rolled it in the corner. I think that's quite a kind of intricate little finish. It's no surprise with a guy of Cunha's talent, but it was I think it was a good goal. Aït-Nouri did really well, to be honest.
Yeah, Aït-Nouri, another assist, most goal contributions from a defender. I think we mentioned that a couple of weeks ago, and that's still growing as well. It'd be interesting to see if the interest grows in him in the summer as well. But like Joe said there, George, the talent Cunha showed. Look, for all his faults off the pitch, on the pitch, he's just been nothing short of amazing in a Wolves shirt. And I think he showed that again. A goal and 2 assists. Just looked miles ahead of most players on that pitch, didn't he, on Saturday?
Yeah, when he's got the ball at his feet, he's just quality, and we all know that. And I think you can almost knock him for his off the field antics, should I say, and some of his off the ball work. But when he's got the ball at his feet, he's just unbelievable. Every time he gets the ball, he makes something happen. Whether it's driving the ball up the pitch, or it's spreading the play, or playing through ball, or whatever it could be. He's a class act, and we all know that. And it's a shame that he's going to United. Because we all know that's going to happen as well at this point. Let's be honest. But I think as long as we reinvest the money, I don't think you're going to get a like-for-like replacement for Cunha. I think we've said that before on here as well. But I think you can probably make that money work and get 2 or 3 options that will fit and complement the system just as effectively as Cunha has. I don't think you'll get the output from a single purchase that you've got from Cunha this year, but I think it'll allow us to play a little bit differently moving forward. I think what was quite good, and there was a bit of a wry smile as well, which I didn't actually realise and appreciate until I watched it back on the highlights last night. I think it was that when the Wolves fans were singing "Who the fuck are Man United," Cunha's like tapped his badge and started like gesturing, like pumping his arms in the air. And I'm thinking, do you know what? Actually, no. Can you actually hear? We're not singing "Glory, Glory, Man United." We're telling them to fuck themselves. But I just knew that the weekend, with all the spotlight on him, he's that sort of player that was going to rise to the occasion as well. And I'm pretty pissed off I didn't captain him on fantasy football because I knew he was going to just show up.
I didn't put him in on principle, but to be fair, I went with Jose Sa and he come up, and I did put Jorgen and Aït-Nouri in as well. So I didn't do too bad in him. But when Strand Larsen missed that open goal in the second half, I thought, it's going to be one of them days, isn't it? But thankfully, he repaid me. Joe, I went into this game actually not nervous as such, but I just didn't think it would be as comfortable as it was. I don't know, and I'm sure maybe it's just me knowing what Wolves have been like in previous years, but it feels like it's a little bit different under Vittel. I think you going 1-0 up at half-time on a quite a decent winning streak. A lot of managers maybe would have sort of put their foot on the brake a little bit, but Vittel wanted to put his foot fully down on the gas, and we went for the kill and managed to do that. But I said on the preview, I listened to Judah and Liam Keane earlier in the week, and they both predicted 4-0 and 4-1. And I said at the time, I don't think it's going to be as straightforward as that. I know they're relegated, but I just thought they were going to put up a bit more of a fight. But I'm glad I was wrong because, like I said at the start, it was just so easy.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one because this is a really kind of damning indictment of Ruud van Nistelrooy, but I really couldn't tell what Leicester were trying to do tactically. I think even when Southampton came fairly recently, you can tell they're not a brilliant footballing team, but they had a degree of setup and they had a degree of what they were trying to do. They just weren't very good at actually executing it. Same for Ipswich, when we've played them. Obviously, they've beaten us once this season, but generally, when you play one of these bad teams, they're bad at doing something specific, whereas Leicester just look bad. And I think there's players in that team that even up to Saturday. I think I mentioned to Jord at some point about Ricardo Pereira, and I do like Samari in midfield, but it's so hard to tell what they're trying to do. Don't get me wrong, we'll come on to it, and we almost tried to throw it away through Jose Sa anyway. But tactically, I don't think they're an absolutely terrible team. I think if you look at the spine of the team, you could argue, I think I posted yesterday about seeing Carlos Forbes at some point. I think I might have seen Oliver Skip as well at some point. I remember some kind of jibes about his Barnet coming in. But I think if you look through that spine of that team, Connor Cody, Wout, Fast, I think the keeper's a good keeper, to be fair. Samari and Skip, Vardy isn't a Premier League centre forward anymore. But I think when you look at in other areas, El Canoes, I think Luke Thomas has a future as a Premier League fullback at some point in the right team. I think Ricardo Pereira has been there and done it in the past. He's always been a decent player. And obviously they've got the token, bring on Jeremy Monga, the 15-year-old, just at the end, just to kind of almost divert a bit of the attention away. But
Yeah.
I think we've always in the past, when we've played these teams, we've not been clinical enough. We've dominated these games plenty of times before. And to actually go and put them to the sword, it could have been 6 or 7 quite comfortably, I think. And I don't think anybody would have argued from a Leicester persuasion. So it was we've said this a few times well in this run, it was a very un-Wolves performance. It was very clinical, very decisive. The substitutes were correct. That we brought the right players off at the right time. We brought the right players on at the right time. We'll come on to Rodrigo Gomez. But I think when you're in that kind of game where there's a bit of a lull, and it can go one way or the other, if we concede the penalty and let the goal in, and Rodrigo Gomez comes into the game, that's a perfect opportunity for him to come in and stamp his authority. And I think the substitutes and the depth of the squad's really coming into its own now. And there's no better team to play than Leicester at this point, let's be honest.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think individually there are a couple of players there. I think El Canoes is one that I think teams will look at. I think Leicester paid 20 mil for him. So again, has he done enough to warrant a move for 25 or for them to make their money back? It might be one of those sort of loan moves with a view to him maybe returning if they get promoted. It's a couple of players there, but respectfully, I mean, I love Cody, but a Premier League back to with Woutface and Connor Cody is just, it's not going to get you very far, I don't think. And I think Wolves proved that on Saturday as well. Jordan, move on to the second half. Like I mentioned earlier, he had a great chance that he put over the bar, Jord Strand Larsen, but his goal, so well taken, brilliant ball through from Cunha, but just allows that sort of half second for the ball to come across him, Jord Strand Larsen, and then the finish is brilliant, hard, low, past the goalkeeper, and just continues his run. I think it's 5 in 5 now for Strand Larsen.
Yeah, he's just proven that he's a very astute signing that we've made, and it's very good bit of shrewd business. I think he's looking at every bit of that 25 million quid I think we're going to pay for him in the summer, worth every penny for it. Because if you said, a striker that's got, what is it, 12 now in the Premier League, I think he's got this year, I think.
Or 13, 13.
12, you're paying that every day of the week, really. And that's in a team that was, let's be honest, fucking shite for 4 months of the season, if not 5 of it. So it's a really good return. And yeah, I mean, the chance he missed was a bit, well, it was comical, to be honest with you. I can't quite believe he managed to miss from there. But then, I think what really helps and what shows the signs of a good striker is that he didn't shy away from it. And that the goal he scored was his next chance, and he was clinical.
Yeah.
And that's what you want, really. You don't, I think the best strikers are the ones that don't get put off by missing chances. You're gonna, you take enough shots, you're gonna miss good chances, but you're also gonna put chances away as well. And I think it showed that. And I think his overall game as well on Saturday, I thought he linked the ball up well. I think he was coming in short, playing some nice, intricate 1-2s. And I just thought he looked really hungry. I think you can tell he's got a bit of confidence with him now. I think when he was going for that little spell, his demeanour and his persona on the pitch was a little bit shrugging his shoulders, a bit like this is tiresome. I'm not really getting anywhere with it. But he just looks like a real solid Premier League centre forward for me. And I think we're lucky to have him. And I think actually, if he goes and does the same again next year, there will be Premier League teams looking at him for 40, 50 million pound plus, because his stats will back that up as well. So I do think we've got quite a bit of a bargain, really, which is mad to say at 25 million quid, but I do think we think we've jumped ahead of the queue, and I think we've got a good bargain on our hands.
Yeah, it's rare actually to see strikers or forwards. I mean, if you can repeat it or better it next season, it's rare to have forwards that are scoring double figures, back to back. You're looking the top end of the table and the best strikers in the league to have those numbers. It is 13 goals. I'm fairly sure that's the same amount that Raul got in his debut season at Wolves as well in the league. Obviously, with penalties included. So Strand Larsen, Wolves still haven't picked up a penalty all season. So no penalty goals, 13 no penalty goals is a really, really solid return for his debut season. He even mocked himself in the celebration though, Joe, because I think he knows that, he should have scored that chance. But it's rare for him even to miss the target because his shot to shot on target rate in general is very, very good anyway. But like Jord said, another solid game. It's good to see him scoring the goals after, it's easy to blow our own trumpet, but when he was on that sort of bad run, you came with those stats and we sort of backed it on the podcast. And I'm really glad to see him scoring the goals and on the score sheet again.
Yeah, I don't want to put other people down, but I think anybody who's got any semblance of a footballing brain can see that he brings much more than goals anyway. And I think even strikers are going to be judged on goals at the end of the day. And if you look at it across the piece, he only needs one more goal to equal his best ever goal scoring season, in the league, and that was in no disrespect to the Eredivisie, but that was in the Netherlands. So I think if you'd have said to him, you're going to come in and score maybe 14, 15 goals in the Premier League in your first season, it's an incredible return, really, especially when you put it alongside someone like Raul, who was so clinical for us. But I'd imagine that 13 goals that he had would have included 2 or 3 penalties, So I think he's done really well. I think the job that, especially since Vito's come in, the job that the likes of Cunha and the likes of Bellegarde and the likes of Manetsi have done in different ways in supporting that goal tally, I think is really important. The way Manetsi peels off, I think for the Strand Larsen goal on Saturday, he kind of peels off and takes kind of Cody with him, which isn't the most difficult thing to do, but I think he's got to make that run and he's got to create that space for Strand Larsen to run into. And I think previously at the start of the season, even if you look back to that Arsenal game, the only chance he really had was that header, I think, at Rayo, which was a great header that he created for himself.
Yeah.
But we never were really creating space for him at the start of the season. The setup wasn't really lending itself. And I think we said this at the time, that the way we play doesn't really lend itself to helping him. Whereas now, you can see, in a few teams now where they play that box midfield and they play the 2 10s behind a number 9, it's naturally going to create more space for someone like him. And when you've got the conversion rate that he has, which is definitely the best in the Premier League, possibly the best in Europe, it's top 3, I think, then he's always getting shots away. He's always getting shots away on target when he's in the right position. I know we spoke about the James Alcott podcast where they talk about an underrated 11. Obviously, James Alcott alongside, I think it was Mark Carey from The Athletic, the data analyst, who's obviously a man after my own heart. They both put a really good case across. He's the most underrated centre forward in the league this season, because I think up until maybe 6 weeks ago, no one was really talking about him. And that kind of change in fortune, it's not accidental that Marshall Manetsi's come into the team at the same time. It's not, and I know people want to downplay possibly Manetsi's role, and I think there's some people who want to maybe overplay it, but there is a very clear body of work there that between, particularly when Cunha was out with Strand Larsen, Bellegarde and Manetsi, that trio worked really well together. So I'd really like to see a bit more of that, to be honest, especially if Cunha does go. I think I think we'll get another season at Strand Larsen, and like George says, he'll go for 40, 50 million, because number 9s in the Premier League who score 15 goals, which he's on target for, they don't grow on trees, do they?
No, definitely not. I think going to Manetsi as well, without watching it back, I think he actually drags one of the defenders across for Strand Larsen's goal as well. But that's what from what I remember on Saturday, but I haven't watched the highlights back as well, to be fair. But at 2-0, Jord, Wolves fans singing 6 in a row, and then all of a sudden Jamie Vardy wins himself a penalty. It was he was poor, I thought, Jamie Vardy. And I thought with his news about him obviously moving on from Leicester, I thought there was going to be a reaction or something. And when he won that penalty, I thought it's sod's law that, he's going to get himself on the score sheet. But a few people saying it was slightly harsh, the penalty to be given. But I think in that situation, VAR aren't going to overturn it if the referee goes for it on field. But Jose Sa coming up clutch to make the save, and it sent Leicester's day from bad to worse, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. And I think I had a couple of texts as soon as the penalty was won saying he's just left his leg there, which is typical. What Jamie Vardy's done that for years and years, and I sort of called it in the ground. You could just tell he's probably just kicked his leg out to Sa, and it's never getting overturned because of contact, but he knows what he's doing. And I think actually it's one of those things. Really, I think no matter what you think of Jamie Vardy as a bloke, he's had an unbelievable footballing career. Unbelievable. It's an unbelievable story, and I think you saw a 38-year-old Jamie Vardy. I think in that's all that happened on the weekend. I think it's a poor Leicester team, but his pace it's not completely gone, but it's definitely gone to what he was a couple of years ago. And I think there was times where Agbady was almost goading him to try and run him, almost goading him, saying, "Come on, let's have a race." And I think Vardy's gave up. But back onto the penalty, I think it wasn't a well-struck penalty, but Jose Sa is one of the. I don't, I have kittens with Jose Sa in a lot of actions that he does as a footballer, but I've always remained that he's a very good shot stopper. And when there's a penalty, I'd love to know what his save rate is in comparison to like other goalies in the top 5 leagues off penalties, because he does seem to save his fair share. I think he might have saved. Has he saved 2 this year? I think he saved another one this year as well.
I don't know. I can't figure this year. I'm not sure of this year.
I'm sure, but anyway, I just always got a bit of confidence when it's a penalty. I don't think
he has. I've just checked his penalties saved Premier League this season. There's 3 goalkeepers who've saved 2, and it's Jose Sa, Jordan Pickford,
Who's the
and
other
Aaron
one then?
Ramsdale.
I can remember it, but I can't picture who it was now. I think it was at Molineux again, but I can't think of the team. But anyway, my point being is there's not many goalies where you fancy them against anyone on a penalty. But when Sa, I don't automatically think, this is a goal. I always think he gives you a chance because I do feel like he's a good shot stopper.
The other one was Son. Spurs.
Just seeing that, yeah.
So,
got you, yeah. Yeah, he's had since joining Wolves, he saved 4 in total. But yeah, two this season. Yeah, I remember that one now. Son one. And then, Brennan Johnson in 2022, just after he'd saved the one against Mitrovic as well. I think that was his first season at Wolves, actually. Like I said earlier, he's in my fantasy team. So when the penalty got given and he saved it, I was buzzing. But we wrapped it up, Joe, and like you mentioned earlier, some of the substitutions, and it was the only thing I felt was a shame with the subs that Matheus Mane wasn't on the bench, because I think that would have been. I mean, Vitor had bigged him up in the pre-match press conference. I thought this would have been a perfect game to bring him on and get him some minutes. But again, we did see the Carlos Forbes. You weren't seeing things. Carlos Forbes did come on, although he didn't have much of an impact. But one of the big ones, obviously, Rodrigo Gomez. What an impact from him, taking a throw in our defensive third, and 20 seconds later, knee sliding on the complete opposite corner of the pitch. That shows what Wolves have got and maybe what we've got to look forward to. A player that we knew he had the work rate, but that is just a perfect clip. And again, great ball from Cunha. The finish almost identical to Jord and Strand Larsen's, but the work rate, the pace, to run from one end to the other within sort of 15, 20 seconds to put the ball in the back of the net is fantastic.
I think the context of it as well. I think if you're 0-0 in a game at home and you're chasing a game, you're desperate to get a goal as a team, then you kind of get it. But the fact that we're 2-0 up, not long to go, we could quite easily just see the game out. But I think the team and Rodrigo Gomez particularly kind of smelt blood from Leicester, and the fact that he's not just took a throw in, he's launched a throw in up the pitch and kind of got back on the end of his own throw in somehow on the end of the play. I think it was brilliant, and I think I've been watching the guy at Estoril in a very hard working team. Sometimes you could think, does he play that way there because that's just the way the team plays? They just run and run and run. I saw a clip of Burnley the other day where they're all chasing back like crazy, trying to win the ball back at 3-0 up against QPR on Saturday. And sometimes you think once you take a player out of that, say the Scott Parker mould of just fucking run your bollocks off and hope for the best sometimes, then do you get a different player once you've signed them? And I think with Rodrigo Gomez, that's just who he is. That's just what he does. I think tactically, there's definitely an argument that I've not seen as much of him as I would have liked from either manager, which would suggest Gary O'Neill wasn't necessarily wrong. I don't think in not playing him as much. I think tactically he does maybe need to get up to the level. But when you've got someone who's willing to run like that, and they've obviously got technical quality, and I think we've seen a lot of moments of quality from Rodrigo Gomez this season, I think it's really, really exciting. Be interested to see where he comes into it next season. For me, he's a natural Ait-Nouri replacement on the at left wing back. It's where he's played. It's if Ait-Nouri was to go, I can see Rodrigo Gomez being the kind of player that comes in. And similarly to, you can't replace Cunha like for like, but you can replace him in the aggregate, as the famous kind of saying in Moneyball goes. But with Ait-Nouri, we were in the pub talking about this on Saturday, and one of the lads said that he's a unicorn. That's exactly what he is. He's never going to replicate what he does with the ball, and you can't really even quantify what he does with the ball because stats don't tell you that story. It's when you watch the guy, he's like a Dharma. He's the kind of player you go to games of football to watch. He's that entertaining. But I think with Rodrigo Gomez in a different way, I don't think next season he's going to come in and get the amount of goal contributions that Ait-Nouri's managed this season. But I do think he's a kind of player that pushes his teammates on because he's, what it's like. It's infectious. If you're playing and you've got a lad who's just running his bollocks off, you'll run your bollocks off for him because he's running his bollocks off for you. And I think that's the kind of player, regardless of what league we're in, that's the kind of player I want to see playing for us. And I love Cunha to death. From a technical perspective, he's a brilliant, brilliant footballer. But if you're in the trenches, I'd rather have a Rodrigo Gomez next to me.
Yeah. Would you rather play him on the left than on the right?
Yes, I would personally. Only because more so, I'd prefer to lose Ait-Nouri than Semedo. Okay, in a weird way. I know that sounds odd given the numbers that Ait-Nouri's put up this season, but I think if you're looking to rebuild a squad, you're not going to rebuild a squad off losing Semedo on a free, or versus getting 45 million quid in for Ait-Nouri, which I think it would be. In an ideal world, we don't lose any of them and we keep the squad in a strong position. But he played left wing back in Portugal. He's played left and right wing back for the kind of Portugal youth setup. So I don't think it makes a great deal of difference either way. But I think the advantage of him playing left wing back is he almost, when he's in the final third of the pitch, he becomes an inside forward in that 10 position. And I think that kind of gives me a nice kind of OCD feeling that satisfies me that if he's in the final third, do I want him cutting in on his left or do I want him cutting in on his right? So I absolutely want him cutting in on his right. So that would be my preference personally.
I've got a good feeling that he would get some good goal contributions, and I think Ait-Nouri's done it. He's been brilliant this year. I think the last couple of years, that's probably what's held him back a little bit. Semedo the same, obviously quality in other areas, but we've never been able to dock under Nuno for argument's sake. I think that's why a lot of people don't rate Semedo because they were expecting bigger goal contributions and so on. I actually think Rodrigo Gomez, whether he plays right or left, will give you those, and mainly just because of his buzz, his energy. I think he'll be able to beat a man as well. But the goal was brilliant. And Jord, we saw in pre-season what he was capable of, and I think everyone was really, really excited. But like Joe said, and it's probably the same with Forbes, we all why isn't Forbes playing or why isn't Rodrigo Gomez playing? They're obviously not quite ready, or because Gary O'Neill thought the same as what Vitor Pereira did. If it was one manager or another, then we'd sort of get it. Like the Andre thing, Gary O'Neill didn't play him as much as he should have. Vitor has, and he's reaped the benefits and reaped the rewards. But I think with Rodrigo Gomez, we have got an exciting talent, and hopefully, long term now, we can start to bed him in. And I think this is why there's a couple of younger lads that Pedro Lima's one that obviously isn't ready yet, but we've seen little glimpses of him, and he looks a quality player. I think it's the same with Rodrigo, isn't it?
100%. And I think the thing that again, I saw it on the weekend, and it's a nice problem to have, and it happens a few times. I go on social media and people saying Rodrigo Gomez should be playing in this team.
Yeah.
And my question to those people, but where? Where are you going to play him?
Based on what? Yeah.
Like, Rodrigo Gomez has just been unfortunate that you've got Aitner and Semedo in front of him on either flank. Is the truth, and they've been good all season. And then and I know there's been clamours for him to play higher up the pitch, but he's not a number 10, and we don't play with wingers. So he's not that. It's just unfortunate you've got Aitner and Semedo in front of him. I agree with everything that you guys just said, though. I think he's an unbelievably talented footballer. He's infectious, works his bollocks off. He's very quick. And I do think that he will get goal contributions next season. And I do think he'll be playing for us. And I think he will be a real vital, pivotal player for us next season as well. Because I think when you've got someone with that much energy, and also he's a good footballer as well, don't get me wrong, but it is the epitome of like a wing back, because he'll be. I mean, he took the throw in one corner of the pitch, and he was 30 seconds later he's putting the ball in the back of the net in the other. So, I think, like Joe said, he's infectious, and if you can get more of those sort of player profiles in and around the squad, everyone working and running the bollocks off, we may lose the technical ability of Cunha and Aitner in the summer, which we're expecting. But I think if you're replacing them with profiles of players like Rodrigo Gomez, it papers over the cracks, because all of a sudden everything else goes through the roof. So, yeah, he's an unbelievable footballer. I think he'll have an unbelievable future with us as well. But I think the reason why he hasn't played as much this season is just purely because he's got Semedo and Aitner in front of him. That's no disgrace.
Yeah, he had a couple of little injuries as well, which I think has probably held him back a little bit. But just looks like a player at the moment that wants to be here, which is great. And I think that's, we talk about players giving, the work rate and so on. And I think as Wolves fans, that's what you want to see. If players are putting in 110%, obviously you're going to support them and want them to do well. So hopefully another successful pre-season for him. Hopefully we get some minutes in between now and then. And he pushes on and becomes a solid first team member. One player that I didn't expect to see again in a Wolves shirt, Joe, was Guedes as well. He came off the pitch, and I mean the issue that Vitor had with him, and this is probably one of the strong points out of Vitor, his honesty in the pre and post match press conferences. He sort of said that Gonçalo Guedes wasn't putting in the right work and didn't have the right attitude. And he's obviously shown something during the week in training, and he made the bench and got a few minutes on Saturday as well.
I think it's another example of just good man management, because I think there's every chance the reason you saw Guedes on the pitch on Saturday and the reason he's kind of come back into the fold is because, and this is purely kind of speculation, but there's nothing to say. Vitor hasn't said, listen, mate, if you get your head down in training and you show yourself that you want to be on the pitch, you'll get minutes and you'll have an opportunity to show yourself. It's not about playing for Wolves anymore. It's about playing for if you're not happy and you don't think you're going to be in and around the team, maybe you're not going to be next season. We'll look to strengthen the squad, and you'll be a bench option, which he's not going to be happy with, is he? No. So I think if he can put it across to him in a way that makes Gonçalo Guedes happy, he's the winner in it, which obviously he's done because he's back in training. He's back, obviously, good enough to be getting minutes on the pitch ahead of Hwang, I will say as well, which I think me and George said this on Saturday. It's an interesting option to bring Guedes on instead of Hwang, when Hwang is the workhorse. In fairness to him, that's his that's his USP, isn't it? But with Hwang, no matter what you're going to get, you'll get legs, and to be fair, he does provide that. But I think there's constant conjecture over Guedes' attitude and what he brings to the club, but I find it quite boring, really, because we don't know what the guy's like as a bloke. We've had it with Fabio Silva in the past. We've had it with various players. We've had it with Sarabia when Sarabia is miraculously not having a run of bad games. Everyone says his attitude's terrible, whereas that's just how some people are. And I think if you were to say to me a Portuguese international who's played for some big clubs, he's played for Valencia, he's played for Villarreal, some big clubs in Spain, PSG, big money moves. He's probably got a little bit ahead of himself from where he is as a footballer, to the point where in 3-4 years' time you sat at Wolves and you're on the bench, you're not getting a game. Would you be happy? I wouldn't be. So it's perfectly reasonable that the bloke would have that kind of approach to it, and he'll be gone in the summer. I'm absolutely certain of it. But I think the way that I think Vitor's a pretty good judge of character. And I think there's players that he's come in and cast off pretty much straight away for various reasons. If you look at Dawson and Lamina, for different reasons, he thinks the squad's going to be better off without them. Whereas I think he's obviously made a conscious decision with Guedes that he could have quite easily said to Guedes, he could have said to Cunha on Saturday. I think we discussed this in the pub. There's every chance we don't see Cunha again now until then, again at all, because Vitor may well make the decision you're not going to be here next season. You're pretty much out the door anyway. How am I benefiting from playing you? But he knows that the team is probably better at the moment with Cunha in it, definitely.
Yeah.
And obviously the players are enjoying playing with him. You can see that in the faces. That if you're Jord and Strand Larsen, would you prefer to play with Cunha or without him? You'd love to have him in your team, wouldn't you? So I think Vitor, from a man management perspective, is, especially when you look at it through the lens of being compared to Gary O'Neill or being compared to, Bruno Lage is a good example of someone who throughout his career has demonstrated he's maybe not the best man manager. He's, tactically he's fairly well set up, but he does have the kind of habit of pissing players off. I think Vitor knows where to stretch it and knows where to maybe rein it in. Say, we need to keep the squad happy, because someone like Guedes is probably close to a lot of the Portuguese guys. The likes of Semedo, I think that they've played with each other for a long time now. So I think it's interesting how we brought him back into the fold. I don't think he'll be around much longer, but fair play to him for getting back on the pitch and getting some minutes in.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think he'll probably be moved on in the summer, and that will probably be the last of Fabio. You assume will go as well. That's the last of, in my opinion, Wolves' bad purchases moved on, and it's almost like a fresh slate, you could say, to be worked on. And I think that's what stung Foes. I know we've had this conversation before. There were so many big signings which just didn't work out. Obviously, Semedo was a big signing, but as pretty much been our right wing back from day one, other than when he's been suspended or injured. But Guedes, it's been a poor signing. Fabio will probably come good, but just not a Wolverhampton Wanderers. So I think Wolves, although they're probably going to take a hit, they will take a hit on Guedes. I think they'll be sort of fairly happy to see the back of him, and just not that he's a bad person, but just say that was a bad move. We could start again. But I don't know, I'm just glad that's the reaction you're getting. I think there is a fine line between digging players out publicly and it going very, very wrong, or say digging players out and getting a reaction. And I'm glad we had a reaction there, because I think this time last week, if you said we wouldn't see Guedes in a Wolves shirt again, I probably would have agreed with you. So it's nice that we again. And you mentioned there, Joe, Hwang as well. Jord, do you reckon Wolves are regretting rejecting those offers from Marseille in summer now? Because he's had, I know injuries could play a part, but he's had an awful season, Hwang has, really.
Yeah, I'd say so. I think they probably made it back up on merchandise, though, to be fair. And like I say, I think Hwang's single-handedly keeping the museum lights on as well, from what I got told a few weeks ago as well, with the South Korean fans coming over. So, yeah, look, I think it's really telling that Guedes has come off the bench before Hwang on the weekend. I don't want to say his future's over with Wolves, but it's quite clearly he's not a Vita Pereira player as it stands right now. I agree with what Joe said earlier on, though, about his profile being a workhorse and stuff. I would imagine that he would have been, or he would fit that mould to come in and be that person. But for whatever reason, whether he's still not 100% fit, we know he tends to pick up a lot of hamstring and quad injuries, doesn't he? So he might not just be back to where he needs to be. But I wouldn't be shocked if we just cashed in on him in the summer as well, because I think the real question would be, if Hwang was to leave in the summer, where do Wolves fans see Hwang as? Like, do you say he's had a good spell at the club? Indifferent? Like, has it been a poor signing?
It's been such a weird spell, because I think he blows hot and cold more than
really hot, really cold.
Yeah, like most players I've seen. But even you go back to the start of Vitor's reign, he scored twice in the first 3 games. He scored against United, didn't he? And then he scored against Spurs. And as Vitor was probably looking at it, rubbing his hands together, thinking, flipping heck, I've got another player here that's going to put the ball. And then it must have been the injuries, because he's really, really struggled. But then, was it last season? Last season he had a really good campaign, wasn't it? Scored 12 goals. It's just, but then the year before he was rubbish.
I think he's been a product maybe, because I could see him in one of those 10 positions, if I'm honest. But I think he's been a product of the balance with Manetsi and Bellegarde has been perfect. I think in that spell, and obviously with Cunha coming back in, that you get something different, but you get a really, really strong product in terms of contributions. Whereas with Hwang, he's just a patchy player, isn't he? I think when it comes to pressing from the front, if that's what you want, I think there's probably very few players in our squad who are as good at that. But then when you win the ball back, you need a bit of quality. And I think whilst Manetzi's not an absolute top quality player with the ball, he knows how to find someone near to him and make a run to kind of drag someone else away. Which I think with Hwang's not necessarily that kind of player. So I think system-wise, he doesn't necessarily suit. So which is why if you look at that would mean us losing Carlos Forbes, big loss. Sarabia, Hwang, Guedes from our potential forward line players. But I think that makes sense if we're not playing wingers. You're talking 3 or 4 players who generally tend to play wide there. So I think we do maybe need to restructure that front line in terms of who's going to be playing behind Strand Larsen next season, what that looks like. I don't think that looks like out and out wingers. There's only really Sarabia out of that bunch that you could say suits that number 10 role really. So it's going to be interesting. I think it's a really, really interesting summer ahead, given, like you say, Dave, with some of those signings that we've made. Guedes for 30 million quid was never really going to end up positively, was it?
No, I think you say that there's loads of content that we're going to put out on the channel in regards to who would buy, who would sell, keep, recruitment stuff as well. So keep an eye out for that. But one game that I very quickly thought of was the Villa win at Molineux as well, because I remember we had quite a few players missing and out. Strand Larsen was injured, I think. We had no Rodrigo Gomez, and I was just looking at that front three. Like Guedes started as a number 9 then, with Sarabia and Cunha in behind. Hwang was available as well. So I just think it shows how far down the pecking order he's gone now, which is frustrating because, again, he's like very hot, very cold. When he's on it, he's a very, very good player. And we have seen that in the Wolves shirt, but I don't know. It's going to be an interesting one for players like that, players that you probably wouldn't necessarily are going to be immediate sells, but I think there could be some interest in for them, and it'll be interesting to see how Wolves approach it anyway. But solid win for Wolves. It's 6 wins on the bounce. City on Friday, which is going to be a tough game for Wolves to extend the run, but let's see. Fingers crossed they can do so. Chats will move on to some other news. Friday, we saw the announcement of season ticket prices. As expected with the adult ones, they were frozen, which Jeff Shee did allude to last year, but they have frozen them across the board. So junior, over 65s, as it has been this season. Jord, that's sort of, I know we've been on a good run, but that's the least you'd expect, because for 3/4 of the season, the football at Molineux had been atrocious, to be honest.
Yeah, and dare I say, Fosen have probably got away with one. The fact that the fortunes and the upturn in the form and the good vibe and Vitor being in the sentiments there. It's really good sentiment at the moment. So I think they'll probably release them at just about the right time, because not saying the bubble's going to burst on Friday at City, but it's going to be difficult to make it 7 in a row. And yeah, look, I mean, he alluded last season to there being a freeze. I think I shared within our group a couple of weeks ago that I heard it would be frozen. But you never know with frozen, right? But I think the fact it's frozen, it's almost a good news story if you just look at it from a purely, look at it from a very single lens view of, well, the release of Frozen it this year, but there is still a lot of uproar and upheaval and bad taste, I guess, from the price rises last season, which haven't been rectified still. It's quite hard for me to comment in terms of, because I technically got a season ticket, but I sold it a few years ago, and I just go to games now when I want to. It feels like a lot of money. It definitely feels like a lot of money for Wolverhampton as a city, for people to pay in those sort of prices. And it comes back down to this benchmarking piece, because I think if Fosen go big in the summer, which we think they're going to have an active window, and they're going to have an active window if you do sell Cunha, for example, and potentially Aitnery and other people, the benchmarking with, Villa, for example, which is pretty much where we are, and Newcastle, I think fans will sort of accept that a little bit if we push further up the table. Now, the form at the moment suggests we're the most informed team in the top 5 leagues in Europe, which is mental. That's not going to stay. But I do think, if we're pushing that sort of fringe European spots, I think fans will sort of accept that the price is fairer. I'm not going to say it's fair. It's fairer and a little bit more reasonable. But if they have a bit of a quiet summer again where we're sort of not reinvesting back in the team and the squad, I think they'll still be. I don't think the season ticket uptake is going to be as high as probably what Fosun thinks. Still, I think people will still drop off because I think the economic climate is still relatively slow, and that people, the cost of living is still rising. So I don't think it's a gimme that everyone who's renewed this year is going to renew for next year, because it's still a lot of money to part with, no matter how good the football is.
It'll be interesting because I don't know the wording. I'll probably get it up to it, so I'm not just guessing. But I think they said the junior tickets are amongst the sort of best priced in the Premier League as they stay as they are. But it'll be interesting to see how other club season tickets fare from when they eventually get released, because Villa, who Wolves had sort of benchmarked themselves closely to at the start of start of the season, they obviously went absolutely mental in terms of their pricing for the Champions League games. So if they do get European football again, if it is Champions League, it'll be interesting to see what Villa's season ticket pricing goes up to as well, because that was a lot of money, I think. Joe, what are your thoughts on it? I mean, like I said earlier on, it's the sort of the least we'd expected, really. But I think just fair play to a degree for sticking to what they said, because we have seen them change and move the goalposts in previous times.
Yeah, I think we've all built up this kind of wall with Fosun to understand that when they do something like that, which is kind of seen as good, there will be negatives to take in the other hand. So whether that's obviously the Wolves women's scenario, which we'll probably come on to, or looking at the match ticket prices for this season, it's still, for an under 14 or for any concession to sit in the centre of the Billy Wright stand, it's 60 quid. For any for an adult to sit in the wing of the Billy Wright stand, which is generally, if there's ever going to be empty seats, they're up there, 56 quid. There is every chance that next season the match day ticket prices will go up, which you can kind of look at in two ways. The kind of, what do we look at? The non-legacy fan, shall we say, which is a term that they like to use. A non-legacy fan, if my old man jacks his season ticket in and then wants to go and have, my old man's getting on a visit, wouldn't mind me saying, if he wants to go and sit out the South Bank and have go and sit in the Billy Wright and enjoy the game and go and sit up there, he's got to pay 56 quid this season. He'll be paying probably a damn sight more than that next season.
Yeah.
And I think that's where speaking as a season ticket holder, if my season ticket, and I'm speaking personally, if my season ticket would have gone up 5%, I wouldn't necessarily have minded in the event that a concession season ticket price can be frozen or come down, or a match day ticket price for a concession can come down. Because if I want to take my lad, now and go and sit in the Billy Wright lower, I'd have to buy a match ticket for myself, obviously, to sit in the Billy Wright. So that's 51 quid. And you're talking, you can get a decent concession price, £8.50 in the Billy Wright lower, but because they're so cheap, you can't sit there because then tickets are always sold out.
Yeah,
so you have to go and pay, out your arse somewhere else. And I think it's the same with anything. There's a commercial decision predominantly behind this, and I think they're quite happy. If they want to charge international fans more to come and watch Wolves, I'm absolutely on board with that. If that's what they need to do, because people, me and Jord follow NFL fairly closely. NFL's a really good example. If I want to fly to Kansas and watch the Chiefs, I'm more than prepared to pay hundreds of pounds for my flight. I'm more than prepared to pay hundreds of pounds for accommodation, and I'll probably pay $250 for a ticket, right? Probably more. But I'm happy to do that because I'm going to do it once a season at most. Whereas there are people, and this is the heartbreaking thing for me, there's people in Wolverhampton now who are going to grow up not being able to afford to watch the club, and that for me is the really disappointing factor. The horse has completely bolted on it. They can freeze it for the next 10 years if they want to, but it's still got to the point where there's a natural transition away from season ticket holders now, because I would imagine, I don't know this, but if Joe Bloggs was to give up his season ticket this season, that season ticket won't go back onto general sale next season onto the waiting list. It'll get passed on as a match ticket, and that'll increase the match day ticket price. So that, and Kieran Maguire spoke about this a lot. The likes of Max Rushton are quite vocal on it as well. That there is a natural progression away from season ticket holders. And I've had my season ticket for 15 years next to my old man who's had it for 30, right? And he's getting to the point where he's at the end of his season ticket journey. He's not going to keep it for the next 10, 15 years. He can barely be asked now. So that's the real disappointing thing for me. The price is one thing, but that gradual restructuring of what a supporter is. And let's be honest, I've said this openly on social media before. In 10 years' time, if Wolves are back in League One, I know I'll still be there. I will be, unfortunately. I won't have a choice. Part of my life is going to the Wolves on a Saturday and doing things that we did on Saturday with the lads and seeing your friends and getting out. You've had a busy week at work. You want to get out and see your mates. For me, that's a kind of guarantee. Whereas that's not the case for everybody. And that's the real disappointing thing. You kind of really etching away at the culture in the city, which I think is really disappointing.
Yeah, I mean, you touched on it there. It's sort of, but I think it's important. Well, I think it's key for owners. That is obviously the model they're going for in regards to, coming away from season tickets and sort of single match day tickets. Obviously, going to make them more money, but only if the club is performing well on the pitch. We saw it a number of times before this season. It was only probably a handful of games where Molineux hadn't sold out. But this season, we saw even more games go down to general sale. I never went to Molineux this season and thought, flipping heck, look how many empty seats there are. But it was still noticeable. It was still. I
think the Fulham game in midweek not long ago, I looked around and I thought, okay, well, and because they're generally season ticket holders who just haven't come.
Yeah,
Wolves are fine. Wolves don't care about that because the people have paid for the ticket.
Still paid,
They've still paid. They've still booked that revenue. The attendance from a marketing perspective is still marketed as the full season ticket holder capacity. So there's just a lot of foul play there that I can't get on board with, and we've said it to death before. You could charge people £500 a season ticket flat rate across the ground for an adult season ticket, and it makes absolutely no difference in terms of the revenue that they bring in. If you look at what Vitor's done in the last 3 months, and I found it interesting that the press release on the website quotes Vitor Pereira. It doesn't quote Jeff Shee or anybody, any of that kind of crowd. So I thought that was interesting because they're kind of keeping hold of the goodwill that people are associating with Vitor Pereira. So I find that really interesting and the kind of optics around it. But I read yesterday that in terms of the position places, in terms of the revenue we'll book from moving from 17th to 13th, it's 13 million quid.
Wow.
So why wouldn't you freeze the tickets? It should be a given. You shouldn't be charging people any more than you already are anyway.
Yeah. The quote that they used on the renewal notice was some of the most affordable junior pricing in the country. So as long as that is true, I mean, I've not looked into that. I'm sure someone may have had a look or will look into it. Fair enough. But it was the least I could do. And it's funny, like you mentioned with the Vitor thing, he's the face of Wolves now, and they know it's working well. Jeff Shee is loving the fact that Vitor's going out to the pubs. He's loving it because it's giving Wolves a good profile at the moment, and it's taken away from all the crap that the club are doing. However, that does bring me on to something which we don't normally speak about. It's about Wolves women. And I know a lot of Wolves fans listening to this probably don't have much of an interest in the women's side, but I still think it's really important that this is brought to light. Their season finished yesterday. They finished second in the league, just 3 points behind the eventual winners, Nottingham Forest women. Wolves women had lost one game all season. And in terms of the squad, in terms of the management there, they've done an unbelievable job. They're always towards the top end of the table. They were unlucky during COVID not to have got promoted as well. So they're always, really competitive, winning games. And I thought at the start of the season, they were making steps in the right direction. Dan McNamara, the head coach, has done a brilliant job there, became the first full-time manager in Wolves women history. They started then giving paid salaried contracts to 3 of the players, which again they'd not done before. But we saw the news yesterday. They ended up winning 6-0, I think, on the final day, but missed out, like I said, on the title by 3 points. But we had the news that basically relevant paperwork for a promotion wasn't completed anyway. This confused a lot of people because it would have taken a massive goal swing for Wolves women to have won the title yesterday, although it was still doable. But basically, this paperwork has to be in by the deadline is February. So basically, Wolves did not do the paperwork 2 months ago in the event that Wolves women would have won the league or got promoted. Which basically means these girls are fighting, working, training for pretty much nothing. So the Wolves women girls, they made they'd stated this last night on social media. They're really disappointed. I think this week they're going to be going to ask questions about it and compile a letter to Jeff Shee, I assume. But Jord, this is disappointing, isn't it? Like I said, there's going to be some people that may have never watched a Wolves women game. I have. Every game I've been to has been really, really entertaining. I wish I could do it more. But even as just an avid Wolves fan and a season ticket holder or someone that goes to watch the men's team, this is still disappointing news, isn't it? That the girls and the women's side of things has been treated like this.
Yeah, it's one of those where it's it becomes anti-competitive at that point, because how are you meant to keep your most talented players, keep your manager, all that sort, and carry on building forward where you can't even they've been working their arse off, be doing pre-season training, cold nights. Granted, they've got facilities better than other women's teams within the league, don't get me wrong, and the club look after them that way. But the fact that you can't even go up at the end of it all, it's just like, what's the point in that? They're giving up their own personal time, taking time away from families, partners, maybe some of them got kids, I'm not sure, to play football, which is all about, the football pyramid is all built on competitiveness. And when it's your own football club that's hamstringing you to never be able to go up, or not be able to go up this season anyway if you wouldn't go in the league, it's nothing short of, it's just shocking. It really is shocking. And I think from a Fosun perspective, we've said this many times, Fosun are only in Wolverhampton Wanderers to make a pound note, or a Chinese yen, let's put it. And they're probably looking at it and going, my return on investment for investing money into the women's game, or the women's game within Wolverhampton Wanderers, is, well, there's little to no return on that investment, because from a commercial aspect, probably from players that they're not buying and selling players at that level, so they can't make money there. In the Ivory Tower in Shanghai, they're probably looking at it going, well, we could invest £1 million, which is a number I'm seeing floated around on social media, £1 million into this, and we can make a run of it, possibly even get into the WSL. I know they're expanding that league as well from 12 to 16, I think, and then maybe go from 16 to 20. But Fosun are probably looking at the moment going, well, we might as well burn that £1 million worth of cash, because for Fosun International, there is no return on that investment. But where I think that's really a sad state of affairs is that not every decision has to be a business one and an economic one when you're looking at the greater picture of Wolverhampton Wanderers as a football club. Like you see, and I think Forest this year went professional in the same league as Wolves. I think Newcastle have recently gone professional.
Yeah, they went up last year. Yeah.
Liverpool went professional a few years ago, and they're in the WSL already. And if you can get into the WSL, like, there is commercial revenue opportunities there if that's what Fosun want to look at it, and it probably won't take you that much money at the moment to get yourself into that. All you'd have to probably do is, like, say, put a little bit of money in to get yourself there, and all of a sudden you're probably in the most watched women's league in the world right now, outside of, I think, America. It's obviously massive, it's been big there for a long time, and that then you're getting eyes on that team and eyes on the pitch, and it's another way and another revenue stream in that way, if that's how they want to look at it. I just think it comes down to the fact of Fosun looking at it going, if we go up, we've got to invest so much money into being in the Championship. The return on investment, because we're investing more money into it, is even worse than what it is right now. And they're probably just looking at going, we don't want to go up. Yeah. But where I think that's really, really sad is, I haven't got kids at the moment. One day, hopefully I have. Like, I think what's really good about the women's football right now and where it's going, from the back of what the Lionesses has done, is like, if I've got a daughter and she has a dream to play football and she wants to play for England or play for Wolverhampton Wanderers, a club that hopefully she'll support and follow, if and when this happens. Like, that opportunity is there right now. There's a pathway to that.
Yeah.
But I think you just need Fosun to just, we've got a lot of women, like female fans, like little girls that'll be watching Wolves, whether they're in the stadium or at home, and probably following the women and the men's game. And if that road to success is blocked for them, that almost like just kills that dream of going to want to play for Wolves, because they're not even full time at the moment. So there still isn't that career, as it were. If you want to play if your dream is to play for Wolverhampton Wanderers as a female, you can't. You've got to get a career on the side of it, because you can't do that. So it's really sad, but it all comes down to commerciality of it all. And whether it's Jeff Shee or whether it's Fosun or whoever it is, the reason that paperwork hasn't been filed it's not been like an accident that they haven't filed that paperwork. They haven't filed it because they simply do not want to go up, because they don't want to, in their words or to that effect, waste money that they're not going to get a return on investment in, and that's a real sad state of affairs. But
there's girls out there, and I've seen there's Wolverhampton-based, Wolverhampton-born and bred girls captaining the England under-16 side. There were girls that were tempted to move away, but kept on board because they knew that there was going to be a promotion push this season. But Joe, this for me, very quickly, this could be a real big dent in the future of the women's team, because there's going to be a lot of talented footballers there that are going to think, you know what, if you haven't got the ambition to get promoted, we're going to move on. And you could see a real fall down here of the women's team if things aren't sorted this summer.
Yeah, I think Fosun will do the usual reactionary thing and kind of very lightheartedly apologise and look to correct it next year. But the issue you've got, as George says, if you look at it through a purely commercial lens, in terms of if you were coming in to operate a company and you were going to say, right, which part of this company is going to be a loss-making entity and which part of it is going to be profit-making, the women's team would be a significant loss maker. Looking while Jordan was Jordan was chatting then. Brighton women's team last year made a £5 million loss, and this year made a £6.5 million loss with a turnover of 1.2 million quid. So they turn over 1.2 million, and they had costs within the year of 6.5 million quid. And Brighton have, alongside Leicester, I think, the lowest revenue in the WSL, and that's in the WSL. So the costs would still be there, the revenue wouldn't be. So that it'd still be significant cost to set the women's team up. You'd have 25 salaries at least, full-time salaries, and if you're talking all in, as someone who's run businesses in the past, that's a very really significant kind of cost impact to go from being a part-time, almost apologetic outfit that Wolves fund because they feel like they have to, which is completely wrong, to being a full-time entity operating with 25, 30 full-time members of staff. That's a £1.5–2 million cost straight away before you take on the additional payroll expenses, all that kind of stuff you've got to operate that part of the business. That becomes a burden commercially. Leicester's numbers are similar. They're both kind of turn over £1 million quidish, but they have £4, £5, £6 million worth of cost a year. That's just for the women's team. And there are kind of workarounds you can operate with, offsetting the men's PSR calculations with some costs from the women's team, etc., which Brighton are quite good at. So there are advantages to doing that as well. But I think when you look at the way they've handled this scenario, all they needed to say was, listen, to Dan McNamara and to the team at the start of the season, this is our 3-year plan. As of this season, we cannot commit to kind of making that application to go into the Championship because of the cost we're going to incur to do it. Everyone knows where you stand. Players either stay or they leave, one or the other. That's where we are. But in 3 years' time, we would plan to be playing in the Championship, pushing to the WSL, and then we'd look to discuss it again. That's all you have to do. The communication, yet again, has been absolutely toss. If they'd have just said, and this is where I think us not having a kind of board member that represents Wolves women solely, which I think is really important that some clubs operate in that way. And Beth Merrick's statement I thought was really kind of well structured in terms of what she's saying. But even Beth Merrick left last year and came back a few weeks later. You'd have liked to have thought when she came back, the club would have had a conversation with her to tell her this is what the ambition is for the season, because surely Dan McNamara and his team were sat with the club at the start of the season and said, this is what we're targeting promotion, and you can tell with the results that they've had, that's a completely reasonable thing to try and achieve, then why didn't the club say then, we're not planning on getting promoted? It's just really, really obscene that they've gone about it in the way they're doing. In terms of the way they've made the decision from a commercial perspective, I completely get it, but in that case, communicate that to the girls, communicate that to Dan McNamara so everyone knows what the crack is. They've just pissed into the wind for the entire season for no reason whatsoever. Ridiculous.
Yeah, I think that's a frustrating thing. They know that a lot of these girls are, like you say, a lot of them have full-time jobs still, I would say, and they're doing this on the side. Yeah, they're probably getting appearance fees and things like that, but that's not the point. I mean, they're taking a lot of time out of their schedules. Like you say, they've got families, Jordan. It's just frustrating, this, and it comes down to communication. It really does, and I will be very intrigued to see what the reaction is from this and what the future is, because I think this is a huge dent in the women's side. And like I said, there will be people that listen to this podcast have no interest in it, but I think it's still a very important subject to talk about anyway. And fingers crossed there is a positive resolution anyway. Let's finish off, lads, very quickly with some questions as well that we had on Twitter. Jord, is Manetsi wearing his boots on the right feet? Bobby Smith, he goes, I love the guy's attitude, but I have to ask, is he wearing the boots on the right feet? I think that's a question that we have probably answered or spoke about for the last 3 weeks.
I think he's wearing them on the correct feet. I mean, there's a couple of times in the game where Joe turned around to me and I with some of the touches, I thought I'm not even going to comment or rise to it. I don't think he had his best game for us, but I think, he was still effective. And yeah, we've talked about Manetsi to death. He's here to stay. Like he's here to stay. He's effective. He does a great job for the team. He does a lot of his good work off the ball. And Vita Pereira again. I mean, played another 90 minutes, didn't he, against Leicester? So just shows how important he is to this team right now in Vita Pereira's eyes. And you can't say Vita Pereira's a genius. He's this, he's that. He loves a point, but then, in the same breath say, well, I don't know why he's starting Manetsi, because Manetsi's a big pivotal cog as to why this team has been successful over the last few weeks.
I'm going to give you some stats that are completely out of context here. I found this really interesting when I read them. 94% pass completion on Saturday. 94. 3 key passes, which is a good number. And that was a game that visibly he looked quite poor, I thought, on Saturday. But outside the context of what were those passes, were they 3-yard passes, which most of them were. But we've done it to death. I think we've all said, and I had this conversation with Gully on Saturday, that I think if we can find a player that can contribute 80% of what he does in terms of running and 20% more in terms of the quality on the ball, then we'd look to replace him. But for as where we are at this moment in time, exactly right now, he is a key contributor as to why we are where we are. Simple as that.
There we go. OJ Bailey, who do we think our new record sale is in the squad? Or do we think our new record sale? It's going to be Cunha, isn't it? Unless he's talking about not Cunha, but it's going to obviously be Cunha. I don't know if there's anyone else in this squad that will go at the moment for over 60 million once Cunha goes.
Jose Sal, maybe.
Tom King.
Tom King, yeah. Team talk.
Team talk, Tom King, yeah. But by the way, you know what? That obviously got posted. I put it out on Talking Walls. I read it yesterday morning. It was the worst worded tweet I think I've ever put out.
Did you do it when you pissed?
Yeah. That was after a couple of Instagram letters, so it explains a lot. Freezing Wolf, talking about Vitor, his success has not gone unnoticed. He says he's not in it for the money. He has enough, apparently. He just wanted to manage in the Premier League. So does that mean he's committed to Wolves for providing that long-awaited opportunity, or could he be tempted away by a bigger club? It's real. Someone asked me this the other day, and I just couldn't see where he would go if there was an opportunity that came up. But Jord, I don't know, unless like Porto came calling again. But I'd assume wage-wise, Wolves could match that, although he said it's not for the money. But I don't know. I can't see him moving to another Premier League team, not at least short term, anyway.
I think it'll come down to being backed in the summer because, again, Fosen are flip-flopped. We've got Lopetegui. And Lopetegui, I know there's a couple of hammers in there, but he really turned our season around. He got promised the world, come to summer, we've got no cash. and then he left. Vitor Pereira stock, certainly within England, has never been higher. A few years ago, Everton fans were protesting and they got super franking instead. Look where that left him. But his stock in England's never been higher. So, I mean, there might be some teams that are after a new manager. I think Spurs being an obvious one.
Yeah.
But Spurs have also taken a manager from Wolves in recent history that didn't work out quite well. So, I think he'll have admirers. I just hope that we look at it in the summer. We give him what he wants in a way of, we back him to the level he wants to be backed. And I hope that we can at least add another 12. I don't think we need to go silly and add 3 years onto it, give him a 3-year deal. I think we could definitely look to extend it by another 12, 24 months on what he's currently got. And if he's backed, he'll stay. I've got no doubt about that. But if we start doing what we've done previously, cloak and dagger, I think he'll walk. His resume shows he's not scared to walk away and go into a new job, into a new country or whatever. So if we don't back him, he will just go.
No, I agree. It'll be interesting. I think that'll come clearer within the next few weeks if there's more contract talks or whatever, because I don't think he'll sign a new deal unless he's got the guarantee that he's going to be backed anyway. We'll finish off with this one from Jeffrey. If the Prem got rid of relegation and became like an American sports league, what 20 clubs would you put in the Prem? So what he's saying is, what is your ideal Premier League? I think you've got to put the 4 West Midlands teams in there. Personally.
Warsaw.
No. Mighty League 2 Warsaw. No, West Brom Blues, Villa, Wolves. Obviously, you got your traditional top 6, you would say, as well.
Do Albion get in it? Do Blues get in it?
I think Albion getting it over Blues. I wouldn't take Blues. To be honest.
If you're in League One, you're automatically disqualified.
No, but it's more so like a 2025 version of Birmingham, like this version of Birmingham with this owner. You'd probably say would be, but then you'd say that about all that.
You'd put Wrexham in as well, wouldn't you? Yeah.
Well, I think been in the Prem, have they?
No,
but never say.
I think you go to traditional top 6. So you got what? United, City, Liverpool, Chelsea, Arsenal, Spurs. So that's your 6. Yeah, Everton.
Everton, Villa, Newcastle.
Yeah.
Sunderland, because Newcastle. Just say Sunderland.
Sunderland, that's 11 with Wolves, obviously, as well.
Leeds.
Yeah. Forest.
Yeah. Might have to come back to Derby. I don't know. Sheffield Wednesday, definitely.
Would you get Sheffield Wednesday?
Yeah, they're big, aren't they? They're massive.
Not Sheffield United, though.
Sheffield Wednesday.
Derby, that's what I was saying about West Brom as well.
No, but we might be saying that. Maybe it's our 20, isn't it? Put West Brom in there.
What if you said which Premier League teams currently would you take out of it?
Oh, yeah, that's
you've got to be talking Brighton, Brentford,
Bournemouth,
Fulham. I'd keep Fulham in. Fulham are prime Barclays, man, aren't they?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Prime Barclays, like when you had all the Blues, Wolves, Albion, and Villa in there at the same time. That was. I mean, we were shit.
You definitely take Ipswich and Southampton out, wouldn't you? Leicester have won it. So you
got to keep Leicester in, I think. Yeah.
Leicester and Blackburn, they've both won the Premier League.
Blackburn have won it as well, yeah. And they were prime Barclays men with, even after the one, it was, your 2 guys and your Brett Emertons and all them lot.
Yeah, Morton, Gams, Pedersen.
Yeah. I think Sheffield, I'm trying to think of the Championship now. Sheffield Wednesday would have to be in it for me. I think they're just a fucking big club. Burnley can fuck off.
Yeah, Burnley can, yeah. Everyone knows Burnley.
I'm trying to think of that. I'm trying to think, Dan, that. I mean, what did we get to, Dave? What number did we get to?
I was just looking at the all-time Premier League 11. So I mean, the top. So this would be. So you got United, Arsenal, Liverpool, Chelsea, Spurs, City, Everton, Newcastle, Villa, West Ham, Southampton are actually 11th in that as well.
No.
Blackburn are there, which we'll keep in. Leicester, Leeds, Fulham. You got Palace, Middlesbrough, Sunderland, Bolton. See, Wolves are actually 21st in that, so we actually just missed out on the top 20. But we've played 80 games less than Albion in the Prem, and we're only 14 points behind them. So we're gonna,
and crucially, we're going into our 8th season in a row in it, and we've just won 6 games in a row. Yeah. So you can't. Well, this is a Wolves podcast.
It's best points per game. Really, would be the best way to look at it, I suppose, as well. But I don't know. I think there's I think we're not far away there. I think you take Wolves, West Brom. Are you putting Bolton in?
No.
Wolves, West Brom.
To be fair, but
I think we're
Bolton
not far away. We want to shout.
No, I won't be putting Bolton. They can't fill the ground regardless of what fucking league they're in.
No.
Yeah, I think we're far. I'd have to write it down, but I'm sure people in the comments have probably got shouts out there as well. But yeah, we'll
just the one last word for the Walsall League 2 promotion push.
Yeah.
Feel like that's worth a mention.
Always, mate. Yeah, I mean, there was some great shouts. I love this. So there was so many Albion shouts about Wolves fans and stuff, and then the one from the Walsall Poundland Reds. West Midlands clubs current place in their respective leagues. Walsall third, West Brom first, Blues second, Villa third. This was in September, by the way. Wolves 19th. And then he put underneath, actually, correction, Wolves are rock bottom of the Premier League. And now they've won 1 in 15, have they? 1 in 13, something like that?
Yeah, and a really bad run in it as well. So I think the level of swing of karma for Albion and Walsall fans since Vitor came in is, like, even looking at it on Saturday, like the Albions could have still got into the playoffs as of Saturday, and they've gone and drew 0-0 with a team who have just been relegated as they're playing them. So like the levels, the difference in levels between the two is just.
I think that's
crazy.
Cardiff going down is massive, by the way. Like they're a big side as well. You know, not a Premier League just a few years.
I didn't realise Vincent Tan was still there.
Is he?
He's an
absolute clown, man. He's an absolute clown.
Yesterday, so I know there'll be questions asked to Vincent Tan. I was like, what the hell are you questions for?
Remember when he changed the kit colour? Absolutely.
There's only one reason why he's still there. He's trying to sue Salah money, isn't he?
Yeah, that's
still
it's bad. Absolutely. I know, flipping heck. But yeah, big up to all the Walsall fans out there. Enjoy it.
Respect.
That is the end of another podcast. Thank you all for listening. As always, if you're listening on Spotify or Apple, leave us a 5-star review. If you're watching on YouTube, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe. We may have hit 19,000 subscribers. So if we haven't, just make sure you press that subscribe button anyway. Jord, where can people find you if they wish?
At Jord7 on Twitter and Instagram.
Thank you. And Joe?
You can find me at Concept Skating and the bar in Slug and Lettuce between the hours of 6 and 8 p.m. on a Saturday.
Get on it, man. Get on it. Might have to be a staple nowadays, you know. I'm at Dave as a party everywhere. We're at Talking Walls everywhere. Drop us a follow to keep up to date with all the latest Wolves news. And until next week, guys, enjoy your week and we'll see you next time.